Edgar Lungu is gone from State House, but his influence may not be. Behind closed doors, a new battle for Zambia's future is unfolding. Who truly controls the levers of power today? Is it the president in office, hidden political networks, or a shadow of the old guard? This is the story of Zambia after Lungu, and the fight for control you're not supposed to see. The Lungu era is over, but Zambia's politics have entered a new chapter filled with power struggles, shifting alliances, and silent battles for influence. In this investigation, InspirAfrica official goes behind the scenes to reveal who's really in control. In this documentary, you'll learn what changed in Zambia's politics after Edgar Lungu left power, how old political networks are still influencing decisions, the role of President Hakainde Hichilema in reshaping the nation, what this means for Zambia's future ahead of the 2026 elections. Watch till the end to understand the truth about power in Zambia and why it matters for the entire African continent. Subscribe to InspirAfrica official for in-depth African political stories, breaking news, and hidden truths. Zambia's political landscape has undergone significant transformation since the end of Edgar Lungu's presidency in August 2021. Lungu, who led Zambia from 2015 to 2021 as the sixth president, represented the Patriotic Front (PF), a party that dominated Zambian politics for a decade. His tenure was marked by economic challenges, allegations of authoritarianism, and a polarizing leadership style that shaped the nation's trajectory. The transition to President Hakainde Hichilema, leader of the United Party for National Development (UPND), marked Zambia's third democratic transfer of power between rival political groups since the reintroduction of multi-party democracy in 1991. This shift has been heralded as a democratic milestone, but also raises questions about the consolidation of power, governance reforms, and the future of Zambia's political stability. The post-Lungu era is defined by efforts to address the economic and democratic deficits inherited from the PF government, alongside navigating a deeply divided political landscape. Lungu's presidency ended amid accusations of mismanagement, corruption, and democratic backsliding, which fueled public discontent and paved the way for Hichilema's landslide victory in 2021. However, the transition has not been without challenges. Hichilema's administration faces the daunting task of reviving an economy burdened by debt, tackling corruption, and restoring public trust in institutions, all while managing opposition dynamics and preparing for the 2026 elections. This introduction sets the stage for understanding the complexities of Zambia's political evolution after Lungu. It explores the legacy of his leadership, the rise of Hichilema, the key players shaping the current government, and the undercurrents of alliances and public sentiment that will influence Zambia's future. The narrative critically examines whether the shift from Lungu to Hichilema represents a genuine democratic renewal or a reconfiguration of power dynamics, setting the tone for the detailed analysis that follows. The end of the Lungu era. Edgar Lungu's presidency, spanning January 2015 to August 2021, was a defining period in Zambia's modern history. His ascent to power followed the death of President Michael Sata in October 2014, with Lungu, then a relatively unassuming figure within the PF, emerging as a compromise candidate to lead the party and the nation. His presidency began with a narrow victory in the 2015 by-election and was solidified in the 2016 general election, though both contests were marred by allegations of electoral irregularities and political violence. Key features of Lungu's presidency. Lungu's tenure was characterized by a mix of infrastructure development, economic challenges, and democratic erosion. His administration prioritized large-scale infrastructure projects such as roads, bridges, and the National Health Insurance Scheme introduced in 2018, which aimed to improve healthcare financing. These efforts earned him support among some Zambians, particularly for enhancing regional connectivity and modernizing urban centers. However, the economic downturn, driven by a global decline in copper prices, Zambia's primary export, accounting for over 70% of foreign exchange earnings, exposed vulnerabilities in his economic strategy. Zambia defaulted on its international debt in 2020, becoming the first African nation to do so during the COVID-19 pandemic, highlighting fiscal mismanagement under Lungu's watch. Critics accused Lungu of authoritarian tendencies, including restricting freedoms of expression, assembly, and movement. The Public Order Act of 1955 was frequently used to suppress opposition rallies and protests, while media outlets faced harassment and internet access was restricted during the 2021 elections. Lungu's government was also criticized for politicizing the judiciary, particularly the Constitutional Court, which controversially ruled in 2018 that his 2015 to 2016 term did not count as a full term, allowing him to run in 2021 despite constitutional two-term limits. This decision sparked debates about judicial independence and term limit controversies, positioning Zambia among African nations grappling with leaders seeking to extend their rule. The 2021 election and Lungu's defeat. The 2021 general election was a turning point. Lungu faced Hichilema, his longtime rival, in a contest marked by high voter turnout, 70.6%, and intense political polarization. Hichilema secured 59% of the vote, defeating Lungu's 38.7%, a margin so significant that Lungu's initial claims of electoral fraud appeared implausible. Domestic observation groups, such as the Christian Churches Monitoring Group, KCMG, and civil society organizations conducted parallel vote tabulations, confirming Hichilema's victory and pressuring Lungu to concede. International actors, including the UK, US, and African mediators like former President Rupia Banda and Sierra Leone's Ernest Bai Koroma, played a crucial role in ensuring a peaceful transfer of power. Lungu's defeat was driven by several factors: economic mismanagement, the depreciating Zambian kwacha, high inflation, and debt default eroded public confidence. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, had refused a bailout in 2016 due to concerns over Lungu's commitment to reforms, further straining the economy. Democratic backsliding, intimidation of opposition figures, including Hichilema's 2017 arrest on treason charges, and human rights violations alienated voters. The killing of a state prosecutor and a UPND supporter in 2020 underscored rising political violence. Ethnic politics backlash. Lungu's strategy of leveraging ethnic divisions, particularly targeting Hichilema's Tonga heritage, backfired in a nation that values the One Zambia, One Nation mantra championed by founding President Kenneth Kaunda. Hichilema's campaign resonated across regions, including Lungu's northeastern stronghold. Lungu's post-presidency and death. After his defeat, Lungu remained a significant figure in Zambian politics. He announced a return to active politics in October 2023, aligning with the Tonse Alliance and expressing intentions to contest the 2026 election. However, the Constitutional Court ruled in December 2024 that Lungu was ineligible, having served 2 terms, reversing its 2018 decision. This ruling, coupled with the government's withdrawal of his retirement benefits, fueled accusations of political persecution by Hichilema's administration. Lungu's health deteriorated in 2025, and he sought medical treatment in South Africa, where he died on June 5, 2025, at age 68 from an undisclosed illness. His death sparked controversy, with his family and the PF alleging mistreatment by the UPND government, including restrictions on his travel and medical access. The government denied these claims, asserting that Lungu traveled freely. The funeral arrangements became a flashpoint, with the PF and Lungu's family rejecting a state funeral led by Hichilema, citing personal enmity and Lungu's dying wish to exclude his rival. This standoff highlighted the deep-seated animosity between the two leaders, which persisted beyond Lungu's death. Legacy of the Lungu Era. Lungu's presidency left a mixed legacy. Supporters credit him with infrastructure advancements and healthcare reforms, while critics highlight economic mismanagement, corruption, and democratic erosion. His reliance on Chinese investment, controversial at the time, contrasted with Hichilema's push for diversified foreign partnerships. The end of Lungu's era marked a rejection of PF's governance model, but also exposed the fragility of Zambia's democratic institutions, setting the stage for Hichilema's reforms and the challenges ahead. Power players in today's government. The UPND government under President Hakainde Hichilema, sworn in on August 24, 2021, comprises a mix of technocrats, political loyalists, and regional influencers. Understanding the key figures in the current administration is essential to assessing who holds power and how it is exercised. Below is an analysis of the major players, their roles, and their influence based on available information and political dynamics. President Hakainde Hichilema. Hichilema, often referred to as HH, is the central figure in Zambia's government. A business executive with a background in economics, he campaigned 6 times for the presidency before his 2021 victory. His leadership style emphasizes economic recovery, anti-corruption measures, and democratic restoration. Hichilema's appointment as chair of the Southern African Development Community (SADC) organ on politics, defense, and security cooperation in August 2023 enhanced his regional influence. However, his administration faces criticism for targeting opposition figures and restricting civic space, raising concerns about authoritarian tendencies. Vice President Mutal Nalyamango. Nalyamango, a former educator and trade unionist, serves as Hichilema's vice president and running mate. Her selection was strategic, broadening UPND's appeal in the northeast, a traditional PF stronghold. As a respected figure from northern Zambia, Nalyamango helps counter accusations of tribalism against Hichilema, who hails from the Tonga ethnic group. Her role is largely ceremonial, but she plays a key part in unifying the party's regional base and engaging with civil society. Key cabinet ministers. Sitambiko Muzo-Kotwane, Minister of Finance and National Planning, a seasoned economist. Muzo-Kotwane is tasked with steering Zambia's economic recovery. His leadership in securing an IMF bailout in 2022 and restructuring the country's $13 billion debt has been pivotal. However, his policies face scrutiny for austerity measures that have increased living costs, fueling public discontent. Cornelius Mwitwa, Minister of Information and Media. Mwitwa is a prominent UPND spokesperson and a key defender of Hichilema's policies. He has been vocal in denying allegations of government overreach, such as restrictions on Lungu's movements. His role in shaping public narratives is critical, though he faces accusations of suppressing media freedom. Malambo Haimbi, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Haimbi has been instrumental in managing Zambia's international relations, particularly during the Lungu funeral controversy. His diplomatic efforts aim to position Zambia as a stable partner in SADC and attract diverse foreign investment, moving away from Lungu's reliance on China. Chipoka Mulna, Minister of Commerce, Trade, and Industry Mulna oversees initiatives to boost private sector growth, such as the World Bank-funded project supporting MSMEs and smallholder farmers. His role is crucial in diversifying Zambia's economy beyond copper. Other influential figures. Mulalo Kabesha, Attorney General Kabesha has defended controversial government decisions, such as the Constitutional Court's ruling against Lungu's eligibility and the dismissal of judges. His legal guidance shapes Hichilema's judicial reforms, though critics argue it undermines judicial independence. Thabo Kawana, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Information, a former ally of Lungu. Kawana's defection to UPND and his comments on Lungu's health sparked controversy. His role in public communication highlights the complex interplay of old and new alliances. Civil society and traditional leaders. While not formal government players, organizations like the Law Association of Zambia (LAZ) and traditional authorities influence policy and public opinion. The three church mother bodies, CCZ, ZCCB, EFZ, have opposed Hichilema's constitutional amendments, signaling their continued role as moral watchdogs. Dynamics of power. Hichilema's administration is centralized around his vision, with key decisions emanating from State House. The cabinet is a mix of technocrats chosen for expertise and loyalists ensuring political cohesion. However, the concentration of power raises concerns about over-centralization, a criticism leveled at previous administrations. The dismissal of 3 constitutional court judges in October 2024, who had ruled in Lungu's favor in 2016, suggests Hichilema's influence over the judiciary, prompting accusations of political interference. The UPND's parliamentary majority, secured in 2021, gives Hichilema significant legislative control, but proposed constitutional amendments, such as expanding presidential appointments to parliament, risk eroding checks and balances. The interplay between technocratic governance and political maneuvering will define the power dynamics as the 2026 elections approach. Hidden networks and old alliances. Zambia's political landscape is shaped not only by visible institutions, but also by hidden networks and historical alliances that influence power distribution. These networks, rooted in political, ethnic, and economic ties, persist across administrations and play a critical role in governance and opposition dynamics. Political networks. Patriotic Front factionalism. The PF, despite its 2021 defeat, remains a significant force, though fractured. Internal revolts, such as Miles Sampa's brief leadership takeover in 2023 and Robert Shabinga's subsequent rise, reveal competing factions vying for control. Lungu's influence, even after his death, persists through loyalists like Shabinga, who demand the return of party assets. These factions leverage Lungu's legacy to maintain relevance, but their disunity weakens their challenge to UPND. UPND's consolidation. Hichilema's UPND has absorbed former PF allies, such as Thabo Kawana, illustrating the fluidity of political allegiances. These defections strengthen UPND's control, but raise questions about ideological consistency and the co-optation of old elites. Tons Alliance. Formed to unite opposition parties against Hichilema, the Tons Alliance was heavily reliant on Lungu's charisma. His death and ineligibility have left the alliance fragmented, with figures like Fred Membi, Socialist Party, and others struggling to fill the void. A leaked audio of Membi's daughter plotting a takeover highlighted internal distrust, undermining opposition cohesion. Ethnic and regional alliances. Zambia's political history emphasizes one Zambia, one nation, but ethnic undercurrents persist. Lungu's strategy of targeting Hichilema's Tonga identity failed in 2021 as voters rejected divisive tactics. However, regional loyalties remain, with UPND strong in the south and west, and PF retaining influence in the northeast. Hichilema's appointment of Nalyamango and outreach to northern regions aim to bridge these divides, but accusations of tribalism persist among PF supporters. Traditional authorities also wield significant influence, particularly in rural areas where they control land and mediate disputes. Their alignment with or against the government can sway local sentiment. For example, Chief Nkana's legal dispute with former PF Minister Bowman Lusambo reflects tensions between traditional and political power. Economic networks. Economic elites, particularly in the mining sector, form a hidden network influencing policy. Zambia's copper industry attracts foreign investors, notably from China, whose influence grew under Lungu. Hichilema's pivot to Western partnerships, supported by the US and World Bank, aims to diversify investment but risks alienating Chinese stakeholders. The Financial Intelligence Center's 2024 report revealed illegal mining networks, suggesting entrenched economic interests that challenge governance reforms. Civil society and media. Civil society organizations such as LAZ and the three church mother bodies act as counterweights to government power but are sometimes co-opted or divided. The government's strategic framing of constitutional amendments as inclusive has split civil society, with groups like the Non-Governmental Gender Organizations Coordinating Council (NGOC) supporting reforms despite broader democratic concerns. Media outlets, while vibrant, face harassment, with journalists like Thomas Allens Gambo arrested for critical reporting, indicating efforts to control narratives. Old alliances and new tensions. The transition from PF to UPND has not erased old alliances but reconfigured them. Former PF members integrated into UPND's structure highlight the persistence of political pragmatism, where loyalty shifts based on power dynamics. Meanwhile, Lungu's family and PF loyalists maintain a narrative of persecution, leveraging his death to rally support. These networks, though hidden, shape policy, public perception, and electoral strategies, complicating Hichilema's governance agenda. President HH's political strategy. Hakainde Hichilema's political strategy since assuming the presidency in 2021 focuses on economic recovery, anti-corruption, democratic restoration, and consolidating power ahead of 2026. His approach blends technocratic reforms with political maneuvering, but it faces challenges from public expectations, opposition resistance, and accusations of authoritarianism. Economic recovery. Hichilema's primary goal is to stabilize Zambia's economy, which was in recession under Lungu. Key strategies include debt restructuring, securing an IMF bailout in 2022 and restructuring $13 billion in debt with support from the World Bank and Western partners. Diversifying investment, reducing reliance on Chinese investment by courting US and European partners, as seen in the Lobito Corridor project connecting Zambia to Angola's Atlantic coast. Private sector growth, supporting MSMEs and smallholder farmers through World Bank-funded programs, aiming to integrate them into global value chains. Mining reforms, formalizing small-scale mining through cooperatives and addressing illegal mining networks, so the Financial Intelligence Center's 2024 report highlights ongoing challenges. These efforts have yielded mixed results. While debt restructuring has restored some international confidence, austerity measures have increased living costs, fueling public discontent. Inflation and unemployment remain high, with critics arguing that economic benefits have not reached the majority, two-thirds of whom live in poverty. Anti-corruption crusade. Hichilema campaigned on rooting out corruption, a major grievance against Lungu's administration. His strategy includes strengthening institutions, empowering the Anti-Corruption Commission (ACC) and Financial Intelligence Center (FIC) to investigate high-profile cases. The FIC's 2024 report uncovered $6.1 billion in illicit financial flows implicating PF-era officials. Targeting PF allies. Investigations into Lungu's family, including his widow Esther and daughter Tassila, and former aides have led to property seizures and legal battles. Critics argue these actions are politically motivated, targeting opposition figures to weaken their influence. Judicial reforms. The dismissal of 3 constitutional court judges in October 2024 who had ruled in Lungu's favor was justified as addressing misconduct but criticized as undermining judicial independence. The anti-corruption drive has bolstered Hichilema's image among reform advocates but risks being perceived as a witch hunt, echoing Lungu's selective use of anti-corruption measures against opponents. Democratic restoration. Hichilema promised to restore democratic norms eroded under Lungu. Key actions include removing political cadres, dismantling PF-aligned cadres from public spaces, reducing political violence. Media and civic space, pledging to uphold press freedom, though incidents like the arrest of journalist Thomas Allens Gambo and restrictions on opposition gatherings suggest backsliding. Constitutional amendments, proposing reforms to address constitutional lacunae, such as proportional representation, but critics warn these could expand executive power and undermine checks and balances. Hichilema's suspension of constitutional court judges and comments about delaying elections for 8 or 9 years if amendments fail have raised alarms about authoritarian tendencies, contradicting his democratic rhetoric. Political consolidation. To secure his position for 2026, Hichilema employs strategies to strengthen UPND's base and neutralize opposition. Regional outreach, appointing Nalyamango and engaging northern regions to counter tribalism accusations. Co-opting PF figures, integrating former PF allies like Kawana to weaken opposition networks. Suppressing opposition, restrictions on Lungu's movements, arrests of opposition leaders like Fred Membi, and police disruptions of opposition events suggest a strategy to marginalize rivals, though these actions risk alienating voters. Hichilema's strategy balances reformist ambitions with political survival, but public frustration over economic hardships and perceived democratic backsliding could undermine his re-election bid. Public reaction to Zambia's political shift. The transition from Lungu to Hichilema in 2021 was met with widespread optimism, reflecting public frustration with PF's governance. However, reactions have evolved as economic challenges persist and new political tensions emerge. Below is an analysis of public sentiment, drawing on available evidence and societal dynamics. Initial optimism. 2021 to 2022. Hichilema's landslide victory was celebrated as a democratic triumph, with 70.6% voter turnout signaling strong public engagement. Zambians, particularly the youth and urban populations, welcomed his promises to address corruption, restore the rule of law, and revive the economy. The peaceful transfer of power, facilitated by Lungu's concession, reinforced Zambia's reputation for political stability, earning praise from international observers. Civil society, including LAZ and church bodies, initially supported Hichilema's agenda, seeing it as a chance to reverse Lungu's authoritarian policies. The removal of political cadres from public spaces violence, and the restoration of some civic freedoms were seen as early wins. Growing discontent 2023 to 2025. By 2023, public sentiment began to shift due to economic hardships and governance concerns. Economic challenges, high inflation, unemployment, and the cost of living crisis have eroded initial optimism. Austerity measures tied to IMF reforms have increased prices, affecting the majority living in poverty. Perceived persecution, the targeting of PF figures, including Lungu's family, and the withdrawal of his retirement benefits fueled narratives of political vendettas. Lungu's supporters, particularly in the northeast, view Hichilema's actions as vindictive, deepening polarization. Civic space restrictions, arrests of journalists and opposition leaders, alongside the use of the Public Order Act to disrupt gatherings, have drawn criticism from human rights groups like Freedom House and Human Rights Watch. The UN Human Rights Committee noted concerns about arbitrary arrests and police brutality in 2023. Constitutional amendments. The proposed amendments, released in March 2025, have divided public opinion. While some groups, like women's organizations, support proportional representation, others, including church bodies, oppose changes that could entrench executive power. Lungu's death and funeral controversy. Lungu's death in June 2025 and the subsequent funeral standoff intensified public divisions. The PF and Lungu's family rejected a state funeral, citing Hichilema's alleged mistreatment of Lungu, while the government insisted on protocol for former presidents. This clash confused mourners, with radio stations playing gospel music to honor Lungu, reflecting Zambia's Christian identity and public grief. Social media platforms, particularly X, amplified PF narratives of persecution, while UPND supporters defended Hichilema's intentions. The controversy underscored the personal and political enmity between the two camps, further polarizing public sentiment. Regional and demographic variations. Public reactions vary by region and demographic. Urban versus rural. Urban voters, particularly youth, are frustrated by unemployment and living costs but value Hichilema's anti-corruption stance. Rural communities, reliant on traditional authorities, are more skeptical, especially where PF retains influence. Ethnic dynamics. Hichilema's Tonga background continues to be a flashpoint, though his regional outreach has mitigated some tensions. PF strongholds in the northeast remain loyal to Lungu's legacy. Youth and women, young voters who drove Hichilema's 2021 victory, demand jobs and education reforms, while women's groups support constitutional changes for representation but are divided on broader implications. Public sentiment is a mix of hope for reform and frustration with slow progress, with Hichilema's ability to deliver economic relief and maintain democratic credibility shaping perceptions as 2026 approaches. What this means for 2026 and beyond. The 2026 presidential and general elections, scheduled for August 12, will be a critical test for Zambia's democracy and Hichilema's leadership. The political shift since 2021, Lungu's death, and ongoing economic challenges will shape the electoral landscape and Zambia's long-term trajectory. Electoral dynamics. Hichilema's re-election prospects. Hichilema remains a strong contender due to the opposition's disarray, but economic discontent could erode his support. The 50% plus one threshold for presidential elections means a unified opposition could force a runoff, though current fragmentation makes this unlikely. Political scientist Neo Simutanii notes that Lungu's ineligibility and death shift the opposition's strategy to backing a surrogate candidate, but no figure has emerged to rival Hichilema's stature. Opposition challenges. The PF's internal rifts, exemplified by Sampa and Shabinga's leadership struggles, weaken its ability to mount a cohesive campaign. The Tons alliance, once a potential threat, is faltering without Lungu's unifying presence. Figures like Fred Membe lack broad appeal, and new candidates such as Lusaka mayoral aspirant Simon Mulnamwila are untested. Constitutional amendments. The proposed amendments, if passed, could reshape the electoral system by expanding presidential influence over parliament. Critics warn this risks single-party dominance, threatening Zambia's multi-party democracy. The rejection by church bodies and civil society highlights the contentious nature of these reforms. Economic and social implications. Economic recovery. Hichilema's success in 2026 hinges on tangible economic improvements. Continued IMF support and debt restructuring could stabilize the economy, but austerity measures may alienate voters. Diversifying from copper through projects like the Lobito Corridor is promising but long-term. Social cohesion. Ethnic and regional divisions, exacerbated by Lungu's strategies, remain a challenge. Hichilema's outreach to northern regions and appointment of Nalyamango aim to foster unity, but PF's narrative of persecution could reignite tensions. Civic space and democracy. Restrictions on opposition activities and media raise concerns about democratic backsliding. If Hichilema continues using the Public Order Act or targets rivals, a protest vote akin to 2021 could emerge, especially among youth. International dimension. Zambia's role in SADC and partnerships with the US, EU, and World Bank position it as a key player in regional stability and critical mineral supply chains, copper, cobalt. Hichilema's shift from Chinese to Western investment aligns with geopolitical trends, but risks economic dependencies. The U.S.'s focus on countering Chinese influence in Africa, as seen in Vice President Kamala Harris's 2023 visit, underscores Zambia's strategic importance. Long-term outlook. Beyond 2026, Zambia's democratic trajectory depends on strengthening institutions, addressing poverty, and balancing executive power. A drift toward single-party dominance, as warned by the Institute for Security Studies, could undermine checks and balances. Conversely, a competitive 2026 election could consolidate Zambia's reputation as a stable democracy, provided reforms address constitutional loopholes and civic freedoms. Conclusion. Who really holds power now? Power in Zambia today is concentrated in Hichilema's UPND, with the president wielding significant executive authority, supported by a loyal cabinet and parliamentary majority. His technocratic approach, backed by international partners like the IMF and World Bank, gives him leverage over economic policy, while strategic appointments and defections from PF bolster his political control. However, this centralization raises concerns about overreach, particularly with judicial interventions and proposed constitutional amendments. The opposition, led by a fractured PF and a weakened Tons alliance, lacks the cohesion to challenge Hichilema effectively, especially after Lungu's death. Civil society, including LAZ and church bodies, retains influence as a moral and legal counterweight, but divisions over reforms limit their impact. Traditional authorities and economic elites, particularly in mining, also shape power dynamics, though their influence is less overt. Ultimately, Hichilema holds the reins, but his power is contingent on delivering economic relief and maintaining democratic credibility. Public sentiment, driven by youth and urban voters, will determine whether his administration consolidates power or faces a backlash in 2026. The interplay of visible institutions and hidden networks underscores that while Hichilema is the dominant figure, power in Zambia remains a complex negotiation among political, social, and economic forces.